This week, Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed to have a nuclear weapons arsenal that cannot be intercepted by our missile defenses. That Cold War rhetoric might be in response to a new hardline policy by the Trump White House. Scott Thuman recently went to Europe and Ukraine and found a new Get Tough U.S. policy may be working.
On the snow-covered ranges of Poland, American tanks are making their presence known in Europe, honing their skills and once again pointing east towards Moscow. In the skies over the Black Sea, a Russian jet comes within feet of a U.S. aircraft, one of a growing number of hostile encounters, raising tensions even if no shots are fired. Russia has been testing NATO's defenses for years. The United States is pushing back with increasing determination. To see where these heightened tensions are leading, we traveled to eastern Ukraine, where Russian-backed and American-backed forces are on opposite sides.
It's a hot war. It is ongoing every day, live fire, mortars, artillery, snipers.
Kurt Volker, a special envoy to Ukraine for President Trump, dispelling the myth this is a frozen conflict.
On average, a Ukrainian soldier is killed about every 3 days. It is a significant level of violence. It's created over 10,000 deaths on the Ukrainian side, over 1.5 million displaced persons, and 2017, the year just concluded, was the most violent year since the conflict began.
But this 4-year-old war didn't start without warning. In fact, experts say the U.S. and the West failed to respond strongly enough for years.
We were very slow to recognize that Putin has been pursuing for about a decade now an explicitly revisionist policy. He wants to change the security order that emerged in Europe at the end of the Cold War.
John Herbst, former diplomat and ex-U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, says that was most evident when Russia sent troops into neighboring Georgia and faced few repercussions, emboldening Russia's move into Ukraine and high-tech tactics used against Estonia.
So he conducted a cyber attack on Tallinn in 2007. He conducted a war against Georgia and changed their borders in 2008. And we should have recognized that the very weak Western response, there was really no response to Tallinn, there was a very weak response to Georgia, was going to encourage him to do something nasty in Ukraine.
Many predicted Russia and Vladimir Putin would be getting a pass under a new president.
You know, wouldn't it be a great thing if we could actually get along with Russia? Wouldn't that be a good thing?
But Volker, who deals directly with the Russians on behalf of President Trump, claims the opposite has occurred.
You've got to have a very frank, direct, and deliberate conversation, which is what I've tried to do. So I've not minced any words speaking with the Russians either.
That seems to be reflective of the president's style anyway, being more frank.
Yeah, I think so. I think in this case, it's actually what was needed.
The United States, under my administration, is completely rebuilding its military and is spending hundreds of billions of dollars to the newest and finest military equipment anywhere in the world being built right now. I want peace through strength.
Those carefully chosen words designed to project this president's vision of American power by echoing a man Trump enjoys comparing himself to.
We cannot shirk our responsibility as the leader of the free world because we're the only one that can do it. And therefore, the burden of maintaining the peace falls on us. And to maintain that peace requires strength. America has never gotten in a war because we were too strong.
Ronald Reagan used Cold War West Berlin as a powerful backdrop for his diplomacy. Nowadays, the united Germany leads the way in Europe. Experts here have also been surprised by Trump's actions.
There was a lot of expectation that there would be, again, some sort of reset with Russia, that Trump and Putin would come to some kind of deal.
Dr. Susan Stewart is a senior associate at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs in Berlin.
There was a lot of concern about that in Ukraine in particular, and actually what has happened because of all of the investigations and all of the suspicions of involvement by Trump and his team with Russia has actually been able to have a more or less coherent line, which is quite similar to the line under Obama, actually.
A similar line, perhaps, to that of President Obama, but not the same policies. Now, some in the foreign policy community believe, whether by design or by accident, President Trump is eclipsing Obama's security strategy.
I think President Obama was kind of weak when it came to great power politics. He didn't understand it. And whatever President Trump's intention, his policy is much better than his predecessors.
The Obama administration famously hit the reset button with Moscow, though that quickly soured. The Cold War feeling returned, and President Obama steadily increased support for both NATO and Ukraine. But President Trump has gone even further, from providing defensive aid to lethal aid.
So the more the U.S. provides the Ukrainians, it may be weakening Russia overall?
The more we provide to Ukraine, if the Russians choose, it means either Russian aggression in Ukraine becomes harder, or Russian aggression in Ukraine requires more resources. In either case, they have fewer resources to commit aggression against NATO allies. And we also are telling not just Mr. Putin, but the Russian general staff that aggression comes at a cost, so they'll be less likely to commit adventures elsewhere.
But President Trump faces the charge of being inconsistent, strong with aid, but reluctant to sanction Moscow as Congress demands.
Throughout his term in office, President Trump has failed time and time again to stand up to Vladimir Putin, despite the assault that he carried out on our democracy in the 2016 elections.
Democrat Chuck Schumer, one of many members of Congress who recently voted for more sanctions, which the president has so far not imposed.
These are mandatory sanctions. They passed 97-2 in the Senate. He's ignoring them.
The administration says new sanctions aren't needed right now because they can be added later if Russia continues its aggressive moves.
What did President Trump tell you he wanted you to do?
I've had meetings with Secretary Mattis, with the President, with Director Pompeo at the CIA, and that is a very clear message from everybody. And the President is, of course, the most succinct. He just says, I want peace. I want peace. And so that's the mandate, is to go make peace, as he put it.
Stepped-up tensions aren't likely to end anytime soon. Russians go to the polls in less than 3 weeks to elect a new president. Vladimir Putin faces 7 challengers, but is widely expected to win a 4th term.